History is full of kings who commanded armies, built empires, and ruled with iron fists, but their greatest enemy was not rival nations or rebels. It was their own ego. From Persia to France, England to Bengal, rulers who thought they were untouchable lost everything: crowns, kingdoms, even their lives. Today, we uncover shocking stories of kings destroyed not by swords, but by pride. King Xerxes of Persia, the arrogance that sank an empire. Xerxes, son of the mighty Darius, inherited one of the largest empires the world had ever seen, the Achaemenid Persian Empire. With vast armies, endless gold, and land stretching from Egypt to India, he believed he was destined not just to rule men, but to bend nature itself to his will. And it was this dangerous arrogance that planted the seed of his downfall. When Xerxes prepared to invade Greece, he did not simply march his soldiers across. His ego demanded grandeur. To show the world his supremacy, he ordered a bridge of ships to be built across the Hellespont, the narrow strait between Asia and Europe. But nature mocked him. A violent storm tore apart his bridge. Instead of humility, Xerxes' pride exploded. He commanded his men to whip the sea with chains and brand it with hot irons as punishment, treating the ocean itself as his enemy. This bizarre act of fury revealed a ruler blinded by hubris. Confident in his godlike power, Xerxes gathered a massive army. Ancient sources claim over 2 million men, and marched into Greece. His first victory at Thermopylae inflated his ego further. He believed no mortal force could stop him, but arrogance blinds strategy. Ignoring the advice of his own generals, Xerxes pushed his navy into the narrow straits of Salamis. The result? Disaster. The smaller, faster Greek ships crushed his fleet while Xerxes watched from his golden throne on a nearby hill. King Louis XVI of France, the crown that fell to the guillotine. Louis XVI never imagined that the glittering crown of France would one day roll into the dust under the blade of a guillotine. He was born into unimaginable wealth and power, the ruler of one of Europe's most dazzling kingdoms. Versailles, with its golden halls and endless feasts, reflected not just royal luxury, but also the king's ego. An ego that blinded him to the hunger and despair of his people. While ordinary French citizens struggled to afford bread, Louis and his queen, Marie Antoinette, indulged in lavish banquets, extravagant fashion, and costly entertainments. His infamous words may never have been recorded exactly as "let them eat cake," but his actions spoke louder than any phrase. To Louis, the people's misery seemed insignificant compared to the image of divine royalty he clung to. But arrogance always has a price. Instead of listening to advisors who warned him about the financial crisis and social unrest, Louis refused meaningful reforms. He believed his authority came from God, and that no parliament, no mob, no ordinary citizen could challenge his rule. His ego told him France was unshakable, that the throne was eternal. Then came the French Revolution. Crowds filled the streets of Paris, stormed the Bastille, and demanded bread, freedom, and justice. Instead of humbling himself and adapting, Louis clung tighter to his fading power. He tried to flee the country disguised as a servant, but his own arrogance betrayed him. He traveled with royal possessions so obvious that villagers recognized him instantly. The most Christian king of France was dragged back in chains by the very people he once ruled. On January 21, 1793, Louis XVI was led to the guillotine in Paris. Thousands gathered to watch the fall of a king. In his final moments, he attempted to speak above the crowd, but the drums drowned his words. The blade fell, and with it ended not just his life, but centuries of monarchy in France. King Richard II of England, the king who thought he was untouchable, Richard II was only a child when he became king. And as he grew older, so did his belief that he was chosen by God to rule without question. Unlike warrior kings before him, Richard was more obsessed with ceremony, pageantry, and the idea that he was a living symbol of divine power. He surrounded himself with luxury, demanded absolute obedience, and treated even the most powerful nobles as if they were mere servants. His ego made him believe that no one, not Parliament, not his family, not the people, could challenge his throne. But arrogance isolates. Richard ignored the grievances of his lords, heavily taxed his people, and punished those who dared criticize him. He even humiliated his cousin, Henry Bolingbroke, by exiling him and seizing his inheritance. Richard thought this would show his dominance, but it only fueled hatred against him. Instead of respect, he inspired fear. And instead of loyalty, he bred betrayal. When Bolingbroke returned with an army, Richard discovered the truth his ego had hidden. Almost no one was willing to fight for him. The nobles he scorned and the people he overburdened abandoned him. The king, who once sat on a golden throne, found himself locked in a dark cell at Pontefract Castle. In 1400, Richard II met a tragic end, starved to death in captivity. The man who believed himself divine was reduced to silence and shadows. His downfall was not due to weak armies or foreign invasions, but to his own pride. By placing himself above everyone, he left himself with no one when the storm came. Richard's reign is remembered as a lesson. A king who thought he was untouchable discovered that ego does not protect a crown. It destroys it. Emperor Qin Shi of China, the prince who destroyed his father's legacy, when Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, died in 210 BCE. He left behind an empire forged through blood, brilliance, and iron discipline. But his son, Qin Shi, inherited not his father's vision, only his throne, and an ego that would unravel everything the Qin dynasty had built. Qin Shi was young, inexperienced, and easily manipulated. Instead of listening to wise advisors, he placed absolute trust in corrupt officials who fed his arrogance. Believing he was stronger than his father, he imposed brutal laws, heavy taxation, and endless labor projects. While his father built the Great Wall to protect the empire, Shi demanded new palaces and monuments to glorify himself. His ego blinded him to reality. The people starved, soldiers went unpaid, and provinces began to revolt. Rather than admit weakness or seek compromise, Qin Shi doubled down on cruelty. He ordered mass executions, silenced critics, and punished entire families for the crime of one man's disobedience. The fear he created was not loyalty. It was a spark that spread into wildfire. Within just a few years, rebellion consumed the empire. Generals defected, peasants rose up, and provinces declared independence. Qin Shi, who believed himself invincible, was trapped in his own palace, abandoned by the very men sworn to protect him. In desperation, he took his own life, becoming one of history's most tragic rulers. The Qin dynasty, once the most powerful in the world, collapsed only 15 years after its birth. And all because a young emperor let his ego convince him he was greater than wisdom, greater than mercy, greater even than the father who built his empire. Nawab Siraj-ud-Dowlah of Bengal, the arrogance that invited an empire. In the mid-18th century, Bengal was the wealthiest province in India, its markets overflowing with silk, spices, and gold. At its helm stood Nawab Siraj-ud-Dowlah, a young ruler known for his fiery temper, rash decisions, and towering ego. Instead of uniting his nobles and generals, He alienated them with insults, punishments, and unchecked arrogance. His court, instead of being a fortress of loyalty, became a nest of betrayal. When the British East India Company began expanding its influence in Bengal, Siraj-ud-Dowlah saw them as traitors, not conquerors. He underestimated their growing military power and, worse, failed to see the disloyalty festering among his own men. His ego told him no foreign merchants could threaten the Nawab of Bengal. But history was about to prove him fatally wrong. In 1757, at the Battle of Plassey, Siraj faced the British forces under Robert Clive. Though the Nawab's army outnumbered British by tens of thousands, his arrogance had already doomed him. Many of his key generals, insulted and sidelined by Siraj, secretly conspired with the British. When the battle began, large sections of his army simply stood still, refusing to fight. The Nawab's cries for loyalty were met with silence. His once mighty army melted away, and within hours, Bengal's future was sealed. Siraj-ud-Dowlah fled the battlefield, only to be captured and executed by his own betrayed allies. His ego not only cost him his throne and his life, but also opened the gates of India to British rule, a domination that would last nearly 2 centuries. Siraj-ud-Dowlah's fall was more than the downfall of one ruler. It was the turning point where arrogance toppled a kingdom and gave birth to an empire. These kings remind us that no throne is safe when arrogance rules the heart. Xerxes whipped the sea. Louis XVI ignored his starving people. Richard II silenced his nobles. Chin-er-Shir crushed his own subjects. And Siraj-ud-Dowlah insulted his allies, each destroyed by ego. History doesn't crown the proud, it buries them. So tell me, whose downfall shocked you the most?